That's a great walk-on beat. I love that.
Yeah.
It's Jim Csek here with Kelowna Now, and we're here with the Bitcoin Show. I have Scott Dedels with me, and this show is sponsored by Block Rewards and Scott Dedels, and today we're going to talk about
Bitcoin is a corporate treasury asset.
There you go.
Yeah.
Take some of that excess cash you got in the money in the on your balance sheet and put it into Bitcoin.
If you have it, or if you're, a different way to think about it might be if you have money sitting inside your corp and you're trying to figure out a way to protect it, what is the argument for Bitcoin, and why might a company consider?
Why would you diversify some assets, right?
Yeah.
I think our friend Elon Musk did that once, right? Like, does he still own it?
They haven't sold any. Tesla actually never sold any.
Oh, okay, so they have it on their balance sheet.
Yep. Yeah, I think that the synopsis of it is it's a handful of companies that have employed the strategy so far, and the ones that have done it have really benefited.
That MicroStrategy one is like, I think that's the biggest part of their business.
It is now, yeah.
I mean, that's billions and billions of dollars of their.
But I think it's a strategy that makes sense for just about every company that has a little money to play with, and so that's kind of what we're going to get into today. And if you want to throw up the first one there, it's something that is starting to happen all over the world, firstly. So this Japanese firm Metaplanet has started levering in, and they immediately saw a share price boost of 90%.
Holy cow.
And a similar thing happened with an energy company in South America a few weeks before. So it's something that the market likes. Obviously, most companies aren't publicly traded. But so far, in the handful of times that it's happened, there has been, it's something that gets you a lot of attention.
Well, I mean, it is an ETF traded fund now, so that gives it lots of, like, where a lot of people were scared of it before. Now they actually have an ETF where they can actually get in and out fairly quickly, and I guess more stable investment too. And a lot of the big investment banks are dealing in it now.
Yeah, and the liquidity is a really appealing aspect about it. We'll touch on like the pros and cons a little bit later, but the next one I think is you mentioned MicroStrategy, and so MicroStrategy started buying Bitcoin in August of 2020, and since that time their share price has actually doubled the performance even of Bitcoin. So and this is just a comparative showing exactly how much better they've done compared to everything else. So there's all the other big the FANG stocks, the other big tech companies, and then sort of the major asset classes, the index, gold, silver, and bonds, and MicroStrategy has done almost a 10x.
So they've only been in it since 2020. I thought they were in it a lot longer. So they just decided to go, and then they just went all in.
Yeah. So MicroStrategy is the first major publicly traded company to seriously employ what they're calling sort of a corporate treasury, Bitcoin corporate treasury strategy, and we're gonna the last slide we have is an actual detail of the business plan of how they've executed it. But
and they were a computer kind of parts kind of place, right? They weren't like they were.
It's business intelligence software.
Oh, okay.
So the short of the story is they were sitting on, I think, $500 million in cash that was being eroded away by inflation, and looking just for the safest place to put it in a way that was made sense for the shareholders. Right. And they settled on this idea of like, what if we were to, it is the best performing asset. It's volatile, but they had some sort of unique aspects to how they manage their capital stack. So they were flexible. And
it's not like tech stocks aren't volatile.
No, totally.
And he's got those cool eyes, right? He's got those laser beam eyes. Michael
yeah, he does have lightning eyes. His are kind of yellow. There you go. So then, it's an idea that has, because of the performance of the stock that's happened, other companies are starting to think about it. And something that's happened this past week that's really interesting is Michael Dell. And I think we have one of these, which is the next one. Michael Dell, who is the founder of Dell Computers.
Yeah, we know him, yeah.
He shared this tweet of the Cookie Monster eating some Bitcoins.
What's it called, the Cookie Monster?
That's the Sesame Street. So that one just caught a lot of attention. Dell is about 12 times the size of a company as MicroStrategy. So they're a $100 billion company. Right. They're not publicly traded, so they don't actually need anyone's permission, or they don't need to disclose if they have
out or whatever.
Yeah. But that was a pretty noteworthy announcement. And so the next one we have here is just a quick visualization of exactly how big Dell is compared to MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy's market cap in 2020 was $1 billion. Today, their market cap is $25 billion. Obviously, the Bitcoin price has quadrupled since the low mark of 2022. And Dell has this, this massive 9-figure balance sheet and 12-figure. And so even, it would, of the companies that could realistically maybe buy as much Bitcoin. So again, as we've talked about in earlier episodes of the show, there's only so much Bitcoin to go around. So this is partly why it could be an interesting play, is if other companies want to start doing this too. Not every company in the world can have 1,000 Bitcoin. There just is only so many Bitcoin for everyone. And so anyone who decides to follow MicroStrategies will be increasing MicroStrategy's balance sheet too. So the next slide we're looking at here is just a list of the publicly traded companies that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Most of them are kind of in the Bitcoin space. Tesla's 3. So Tesla has 10,000 Bitcoin. There are 21 million Bitcoin ever. There will never be any more.
And Tesla got some of that by buying, but some people were, he was allowing people to actually buy cars with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't know how many
period of time,
how many people actually did. There's been a lot of cries for him. He said he would resume accepting Bitcoin, and he has not. They have not done that yet. And so if you look at the scale, I don't know if you can see that. So Tesla in third place, just under 10,000 Bitcoin. MicroStrategy has 226,000 Bitcoin. They actually just bought another 11,000 Bitcoin the other day.
So technically, I have to disclose I do own Bitcoin through Tesla.
There you go.
My share of that will probably be very small.
Yeah. So that would be, like 1% of all of the Bitcoin would be 210,000 Bitcoin.
Right.
And so you have to imagine that only 99 other companies in the world, if all the Bitcoin were even available, could own as many Bitcoin as MicroStrategy owns. And
I'm surprised that Tesla owns that much too.
Yeah. And I know that Elon has disclosed that he has personal holdings as well. So
why not?
Yeah.
He's got a few bucks.
He can afford it. So that's so the next slide we have is just sort of like maybe an overview of the kinds of assets that companies might hold, and this is sort of that basic concept of you have sort of excess or working capital that doesn't need to be deployed in the short term, sitting on your balance sheet, and everybody today is really facing this same problem of the value of that money would be sitting there doing nothing is diminishing every day.
Right.
And the rate that it is diminishing in purchasing power is accelerating. And they just actually, Tiff Macklem said yesterday, they lowered interest rates and the inflation rate ticked back up again. If you believe those numbers, 2.6 back to 2.9. So that's a measurement.
Well, energy went back up, obviously. You know what I mean? Like we see it at the gas pump. You don't have to watch Tiff Macklem. Just look at the pump.
I would actually recommend you don't watch Tiff Macklem, but
you just look at the pump and you'll see why it goes up, and then because everything requires energy. So if it's going up at the pump, it's going up in the rest of the stuff too.
Yeah, a lot more than 2.9% too would be my guess. Yeah. So you don't have the option of doing nothing. Bitcoin is this, is interesting. If we think about convertibility, you mentioned the ability to get in and out of Bitcoin. So this is a pro for Bitcoin for sure. And, the physicality of an asset, I think that oftentimes businesses will think about real estate as a way to diversify. And, a lot of companies kind of become property companies as a secondary derivative of their regular business. But if you think about the strategy of trying to own a building or some real estate as a way to protect the capital inside your company, it's fairly complicated because you're then thinking about maintenance and upkeep, taxes, tenants, zoning, different types of regulation, like how we saw the shift in BC with short-term rentals. Yeah. Right, and so the Bitcoin, the part of the argument for why you might want to own Bitcoin with the company is it's easy to sell when you want to sell it, and while you're not selling it, there's not really a lot to do with it. Bitcoin doesn't rust, it doesn't degrade over time. You don't need to water it. It doesn't. Nobody lives in it.
No taxes to pay on it.
That's right.
The ETF really kind of legitimized it for sure for a lot of people that were wary of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially if you're a larger corporation and you have like lots of excess cash sitting there, being able to get in and out of something is more keen. Well, when you talk about real estate companies, like if we look at McDonald's, if you watch the founder, I mean, basically their model was to be a real estate company, right? Not necessarily a franchise. They're making a lot of their money off the real estate. Hudson Bay Company right now, there's more value in its real estate than there is in their stores, right? So
I think that was a lot of companies, and that strategy I don't think is going to work the same way over the next 30 years that it did over the last 70. And just this week there was also a national news article about Canada Pension Plan had a $1.25 trillion write down on a portfolio of commercial space.
Commercial space is definitely on the tougher side of it right now, right? So even retail space, like ground floor retail space in larger cities, tougher.
I think online shopping and AI, work from home, these are all sort of like the non-temporary things that have
changed. There's been a paradigm shift for sure, right? In commercial space.
So the market's probably repricing that. And again, so if you're thinking about the risk reward and what's involved in maybe using that to just as a way to protect some of that capital, or you just have this thing that's really designed to keep track of how much you have.
How do you put the money to work, really, right? Or how do you keep the money at least? You know what I mean? How do you preserve that capital? Because there is companies that purchase gold as well, like as central banks do, right? That's another form of diversifying. So diversification makes sense. And with the ETFs, I would say that, Bitcoin probably makes a lot of sense. So what do we got next? So this is a zoom in again, just to say, how much does it make sense? I think that I started mention this in some shape or fashion every episode, but it so much attention with Bitcoin gets put on the ups and downs, and people love to talk about the volatility. But with that volatility has really come performance, and over basically any time frame that's longer than 4 years, Bitcoin has been the best performing asset that has ever been available. I just want to say, just for some people, because some people will say you cherry pick the time frame, but you're picking the life of Bitcoin, basically, right? Is that?
So in this case, this is a slide from MicroStrategy that shows since they started.
Right.
We can only go back to 2009.
Right. So you kind of because if you take gold over its life, which is a long time, it's going to have a gain that's astronomical as well. But so time frames matter to some people, because some people, if you say your time frame to an investment is 200 years, well, it's not going to help you, right?
Yeah. And that's where I think on the reverse would be true for Bitcoin. So for businesses that are listening to this and thinking about, maybe we should be considering owning some Bitcoin, it is not for capital that needs to be deployed in the short term. Yeah. And it is a volatile asset. And so you could buy it, and 3 or 6 months later, it might be worth half what you paid for. And this happened to a sort of business owner in my network, and he's asking me, how long do you think I'm going to have to wait before I can sell this thing again, break even? Yeah. And so if it's that short term of a use, that's really not a good idea. But if this is something that is, you wouldn't buy a building for 3 months either. So I think that's the way to really frame the
unless you watch those HGTV shows and you're the flipper.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's like sometimes a better strategy, whether that's stocks, Bitcoin, gold, or whatever, is to kind of average cost in, buy it over a period of time, instead of saying, well, I've got $10,000, I'll put it into Bitcoin. Why not put in $1,000 this month? You know what I mean? And if it's going up, you're actually helping it go up. And if it's going down, you're averaging down or whatever. As long as you believe in the overall strategy. I mean, that's some of the way I buy a lot of stocks, right? I don't go and just buy the whole thing at once.
Yeah, a dollar cost average is great for people who are really, I want to say smart shoppers, or people who care about the entry price that they get. And if you're buying a little bit all the time, then that really removes the pressure on you to pick the perfect time to buy.
Right. Because, you could do that with shares in a stock. You could do that with bullion. You could do that with Bitcoin. You could do it with a variety of assets, right?
Yeah. Or, if you just believe in the thesis and you want to take the plunge, that I think there is, so far, both strategies have worked because of how it's performed over longer time frames.
But don't bet the rent on anything.
That's right.
Whether that's even on a treasury bill.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
right?
For sure.
If you need that access to that cash, it's just not the right strategy to lock it up and not have access to it if you need it.
Mm-hmm. What do we got next? So, yeah, this is an interesting kind of comparison, just that in some ways speaks to the simplicity that I was talking about. With Bitcoin, you really are just buying something that has this fixed set of rules and properties that don't change. And so it's pretty simple. While you're owning Bitcoin, the price may go up and down, but what it does doesn't change. How much of it doesn't change. It just, the price will fluctuate. Whereas if you're thinking about shares as an example, you have all kinds of other complexities to consider that a lot goes into determining the price of a stock. And, one of them, for example, is this dilution risk. This happened with GameStop recently where there's, sort of these... what's his name? Kitty is trying to.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're trying to short a hedge fund and nuke them again. And what GameStop did in response to that was issue a whole bunch of shares. And so you have other sort of like risk factors that aren't present when you're.
One of the risk factors for Bitcoin though would be government regulation. And even SEC regulations saying you can't hold it on your balance sheet or something like that. I mean, those may not happen, but those are real risks that could happen, right?
Yeah, I think we're probably past the point of return on that one. So the state of Wisconsin pension plan announced $160 million Bitcoin buy maybe 2 weeks ago. And so there have been a lot now of pretty significant.
Yeah, pension funds move into that'd be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean the argument for that happening for every pension, I would say, is getting stronger by the day because as fund managers, you can only go so long without having the best asset in your portfolio. I mean, you don't have to have a 10% allocation,
right?
But if you don't have any, and again, there's only so many of them. So if every pension simply made like a 0.1% allocation, that's going to be a lot of capital that's going to flow in.
And if you don't know what you should put in, I asked ChatGPT.
There you go.
I asked ChatGPT what the bullion size of your portfolio is, and it said anywhere from 5 to 15%. And then for Bitcoin, it said anywhere from 3 to 5. So
BlackRock came up with a report, and they said the ideal Bitcoin allocation was 85%.
85.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's a pretty strong.
Depends on your
strong number.
Depends on who you ask. That's
right.
Yeah. So I think we had one more just to finish up. Yeah. This is a cool slide that really digs into the details of what Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy has been doing. So basically, they are taking on debt and issuing shares and using that
leverage,
that capital to buy Bitcoin, which then appreciates and lets them borrow more and dilute more, which because as the Bitcoin appreciates, it's growing their market cap and their share price. So then they can print more stock, borrow more money, buy even more Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin goes even higher. So people have asked Saylor, at what point are they going to be selling? And his answer is never. And Saylor's been adamant that sort of his understanding of Bitcoin is he thinks about it as sort of it's Manhattan real estate in the digital world. And so people who were buying Manhattan real estate 300 years ago, they weren't selling it ever, and they became the big land developers and the most desirable real estate in America, or maybe in the world, for a great many years. And so as it appreciates indefinitely, theoretically, it appreciates your borrowing power and your ability to grow your market cap, and creates this cycle where I don't know how many Bitcoin they're going to plan on buying, but I've seen him speak in person, and I know they're not done. So it's a one-of-a-kind strategy that I think will either...
That guy's got nerves of steel.
Yeah.
Because when Bitcoin was, I think he did that discussion with Frank Jurista on gold versus Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And at that time, Bitcoin was doing extremely well. And then it fell off quite dramatically. I think it fell down close to like 15 or something like that, somewhere around there. And then most guys, I mean, they were talking about, is he going to get fired or all these things, right? Because he was probably below his break even.
Yeah.
And then Nerves of Steel stayed with it, and so did MicroStrategy stay with him. Yeah. And then obviously he looks pretty golden again.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, what happens. This is another thing, if Bitcoin continues to appreciate and proves out the thesis, then there are going to be other corporate leaders that decide to do the same thing. And that's just in the US, in countries like Canada, where our currency is a lot wobblier. I think the strategy makes a lot more sense the further away from the US dollar you get as a company, because we definitely need to start considering the counterparty risk of the Bank of Canada so that applies to any sort of holdings that you might have corporately that are denominated in Canadian dollars. And we talked about this in the last episode.
Yeah, because if there's some banks out there right now, Canadian banks, at least one, saying the dollar could go to 53 cents.
Mm-hmm. So
that would be terrible for Canadians, and especially if you have all your assets denominated in Canadian currency.
Totally. Or if you're holding Canadian real estate as an example, and this is where, if you look at the price chart of Bitcoin, we usually look at the U.S. chart, but it would look very different in every currency. So in the countries where the currency has already experienced a severe inflation, Lebanon or the chart,
Turkey, Venezuela
has already gone vertical. Yeah, and so
we could go on and on, right?
Yeah. So if the Canadian dollar were to diverge from the U.S. dollar, that is one scenario where Bitcoin would look really good.
Even the U.S. dollar right now, with the BRIC nations doing what they're doing, doesn't look as stable as it once did.
Yeah, the petrodollar agreement for settling oil deals in the U.S. dollar expired a few weeks ago, very quietly, and there's growing evidence that BRIC countries are settling oil deals in gold. And you mentioned a few times that the BRIC central bank countries have been buying gold,
stockpiling gold. So Russia and China have been buying gold en masse, and even their cultures are. It's most people hold gold, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's that whole in India as well. They're part of the BRIC nations, but I mean to them, gold is a very desired asset, right? Whereas for some reason, the Bank of Canada owns zero gold,
not 1 ounce. Yeah.
And most of the people in Canada don't understand gold, and they think it's like a waste of time and stuff like that. But gold has a really strong industrial use, especially going into the future with AI and all that stuff, because gold is one of the best semiconductors out there. It has industrial uses that go past. It's a lure. It's a safe haven asset.
Yeah, you mentioned AI. Like I think people are, experiencing ChatGPT or like Leonardo, make a art, and it's obvious that it's developing very quickly. But I think it's changing a lot faster than most people can appreciate.
It's accelerated at an accelerating pace. Yeah. For my personal example, we don't get too far down this road. Maybe we can do a different show on it. But I have a car that drives me back and forth to work, point to point, and I talk to ChatGPT in fluid discussions in that drive. Like it's not like a broken Siri, like with Siri you just get frustrated, right? But it's fluid and every iteration gets better.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, and we're going to do something in the next little while too that is going to be important for Kelowna here too. So.
Yeah, there's a great argument for this is maybe a little bit off topic, but it's on topic. There's a great argument for AI being a very bullish development for the price of Bitcoin, and the reason is that AI is sort of this a technology that will create like infinite downward pressure on the cost of labor and the capacity of what can happen online. And so the only way to really offset that is to have a digitally native asset that is the opposite of the infinite. And so the only way to really quantify an unlimited amount of production is with a finite thing that can really like absorb all of that energy. And I don't know, actually, Jason, is it possible to play that clip, or it might not be possible? There is a clip from Squawk Box. I think it was yesterday that was talking about this exact subject. And if we can't play it today, we could play it next time. But
We are sitting on the precipice of abundance in so many ways with technology. I think what's in the way of a lot of that abundance, energy and all kinds of stuff, is definitely government regulations and stuff like that. And I think that's what's slowing things down. Tesla's in the process right now building the largest dojo center, computer center, AI center in the world in Texas. And in many other, I think, nations and people are building something similar. Stuff is happening so fast, and it's going to leave you with one of these things. Remember the movie Terminator? Remember Skynet?
yeah,
So Starlink is basically, I think, not saying it's as bad as Skynet, but like it's going to be the largest global communications company in the world because they've launched, I think, last week, the mini disc, which fits in a backpack, and it gives you internet anywhere in the world, on the top of the Himalayan mountains, on Antarctica, on the top of the North Pole, wherever you go, for $30 a month, you have internet.
Yeah, it's wild. There was a video that I saw online from a couple days ago of a Russian soldier being chased down by a drone that was autonomous and heat-seeking missile. Basically, this thing, has exploded, and this is another thing, like the merging of AI and war is going to be.
AI is it's accelerating at an accelerating pace, and so I think the more that you know about it, the better equipped you are to handle the future. So
yeah, lots of change ahead. The short of it, I think that for a lot of different reasons, it's not only not a crazy idea, but owning some Bitcoin corporately, if you have some capital that you're looking to do something with, makes a ton of sense. And I will just maybe as a finishing thought say, if anyone's watching and they're interested, this is stuff I'm happy to talk about. So please feel free.
There is a form in the bottom. I'm going to put this article up, and it'll have Scott's contact details. Dedels details.
There you go.
Dedels details. Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
And now you can reach out. But in the digital world, in this brave new digital world, which I think is going to become more and more digital, there's digital money.
Yeah.
And that's all we have for today on the Bitcoin Show, sponsored by Block Rewards. And again, if you have questions, Scott's contact information is below. And we thank you for watching Kelowna Now.